Hello everybody, my name is Laurel. I haven't used my YouTube channel in maybe over 4 years, and I don't think I plan on uploading frequently after I put this out either. I don't know if I'll ever make another commentary video in the future similar to this, because I really don't like anything that involves drama, but seeing as I am directly involved in this situation, I think that what I have to say and my input would be really important. This video is probably going to go out after most of the height of the hubbub has calmed down, because I don't want to add fuel to an already raging fire. I just think that there's some people ought to know a few things due to how closely involved I was with her. As always, please do not harass or bash anyone mentioned in this video. And by the way, I'm not just saying that as a disclaimer, I truly mean it. This is not a video dedicated to hating Synni or making fun of her or trying to ruin her life. This is a video on my experience, personally. I'd appreciate it if the comments here could be free from any ill will or extreme negativity as well, no matter how upset you may be. Every other video on this topic kind of rehashes the same points about this drama, and this video isn't going to be doing that. I'm assuming you're all watching this already knowing what has happened, so I'm not going to restate the obvious. Since this is a public issue, it's important that I say what I know to help prevent spread of misinformation, and just so people know my own story. I'm known by a lot of people, but mostly only as Synni's friends, so you'll learn more about me too, which is kind of my end goal. I want to be an individual instead of the sad ex-friend of that one guy, you know? So hopefully by the end of this video, you'll get a nice introduction on me, and I'll get to fully close this chapter behind me. I also want to add another disclaimer that there are facts about this situation or dates or events that I could possibly get wrong. I only have my own direct messages with Synni and my own memory to go off of, so I may get some things incorrect. I'm talking about things that span 5 years, and a lot of my memories of 2020 have kind of been lost due to how severely traumatic that time was for me. I have a hard time remembering things from 2020. So if you are someone who actually knows something I said was wrong and was directly involved in this, please don't assume I'm trying to lie or twist the story. You're more than welcome to correct me in the comments, but I promise I have zero duplicitous intent. And also I just do want to say, as just an aside, Synni, if you are watching this, I want you to know I do not hate you or want you to eternally suffer. I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, want you to become a better person, but I cannot stay in your life anymore, even if you do. And you know why. There are too many broken promises you've made me, and it weighs too deeply on my mental health and has also resulted in literal victims. This isn't a video made to slander you or drag you any further through the mud. I just need peace of mind, and I also need people to know things, because I don't want to have this forever weighing on my mind and have people not knowing my side of the story, because I don't really want to be asked any more questions about this in the future, you know? So, okay, now with all that done, I'm going to start from the very beginning. Two of us have never known each other in real life. I know many people are under the impression of. We have always simply been online friends and have lived on opposite sides of the USA. We have never met in person. We initially met kind of by sheer coincidence. I was actually never really a fan of her work nor involved in the animation meme community in any way. I only barely knew who she was when we became friends, because I feel at the time everyone and their mothers knew who Scootaloo Loves Sans was, whether they watched her stuff or not. She was infamous on the internet and probably the most well-known Sans fangirl, quote-unquote, back then, maybe aside from Birdie. But I used to see her in fangirl cringe compilations and such, because I was really into the Undertale fandom at the time. I was 15, 16 years old. But I was never really in the fangirl side of it, my feelings for Sans were strictly platonic, and if anything, I was busy shipping him with his Shadow the Hedgehog kinsona at the time. TLDR, I was not an animation memer. Our first encounter was in July of 2019 when Tumblr alerted me that I had been followed by a user called Synnibear03. I had no idea who that was, so I went to go check their profile, and after scrolling for a little bit, it dawned on me holy shit, is this Scootaloo who loves Sans? I then sent her an asking her why she followed me, and she replied, "I like your fanfic, The Council of the Inevitable, ;W, and I think you're cool, so yeah." I'm going to give a little bit of context to the fanfic because it is actually slightly important to the story. I promise I'm not just advertising it, although I could be. You don't know that. The fic that I made that Cindy is referencing is called The Council of the Inevitable. It's a long fic that I wrote, and it's up on Archive of Our Own. I've been writing it since I was 16. Currently, I am 22, and it is still ongoing. I'm in the middle of writing chapter 36 right now, and as of this recording, it's around 220,000 words. This is due to, mental illness or something. I don't know. It's for the Undertale AU fandom, the Ink Sans and Air Sans stuff, the Underverse, and yeah, you get it. Surprisingly, that fandom is still alive to this day, and surprisingly, I am still here after 7 years. Don't ask me, I don't know why. The general plot of my story takes place 100 years after the event of the animated series Underverse by Jael Peñalosa. The Omega timeline, for if you're not familiar with UTMV, it's kind of seen as the safe haven timeline. Because it takes place 100 years later, it's now this crazy city, and leading it is a council which consists of Ink, Dream, Corfrisk, Reapertail Toriel, Reapertail Gaster, who I nickname Alchemy in the story, and a bunch of other guys. Alchemy is kind of the head leader because I figured that, Corfrisk could maybe run a city, but not a small town. Corfrisk could run a small town, but not a huge, massive metropolis city. You know what I mean? So I had Reapertail Gaster, known as Alchemy, kind of be act as the main leader, but also almost a stand-in parental figure to Corfrisk, which I thought that was a neat idea. I did a lot of world building for what the massive city of the Omega timeline looks like, along with the way that the council building functions. It's this massive golden labyrinth with almost everything you can find in it and every department imaginable. I will just give a disclaimer right now about this story. The main plot centers around a relationship between Ink and Air, and the fic is rated M for mature. Not for anything NSFW, but because it deals with a lot of very tragic themes, and I use heavy language as well, so it's meant for people who can emotionally process that. I'd encourage reading the tags if you are curious about wanting to check it out. It's kind of my brain baby of writing. I'm still very proud of it. At this time, back in late 2019, I didn't really have any sort of large audience or fan base. I mean, I still don't, but I'm at a point where I am recognizable to the people in the right niche. But back then, my fanfiction maybe only had a couple thousand views, and I maybe had 100 Tumblr followers to my name. Plus, I'd really only had an online presence for a half a year at this point. I was I was 17 years old, and Cindy was 15, almost 16 at the time. Even though I barely knew her, the fact that such a massive YouTuber was following me and had also explicitly said they read and loved my fanfiction to their massive public audience kind of freaked me out, but in a good way. I had never really faced that kind of attention before, and I was giddy over it for weeks. Nothing ever went past that Tumblr interaction between the two of us, other than the fact that I now had in the back of my mind, oh my god, a huge YouTuber loves my stuff, but months passed, and then in September of 2019, I made my first Discord account. I had never used the platform before, and I'd only vaguely heard of it from other friends, but I remember the reason I made an account was because some of my other Tumblr mutuals were doing this big Undertale related roleplay thing on a Discord server, and I was curious and I wanted to join, so I ended up making a Discord account. And after about like a week of having Discord, I started branching out and joining another server. I joined this like Undertale related server. I was starting to get the hang of Discord, and after I joined this other server, I surprisingly got recognized by like a vast majority of people in the general chat. Someone pointed out something like, "Oh my god, are you the author of Takati?" Takati, that's how I verbally abbreviate it, TCOTI. Okay, yeah, anyways. They were like, "Oh, are you the author of Takati?" And then other people started chiming in as well and saying like, "Oh my god, I can't believe the author of Takati is here. Oh my god." And I remember at the time I had never really had that type of like praise on me before. I was like extremely flattered. I remember I had this conversation on my phone underneath the table in one of my high school classes because I was so excited that people like knew me that I couldn't put it down and focus on my schoolwork. At one point, I forgot if it was me who brought it up or someone else. I genuinely don't have a way to like check and find receipts. This server doesn't exist anymore, and it's been 5 years, so my memory is bad. But the topic of Synni did come up, and one of the people in the general chat had said something about how they were the one who recommended my story to Synni because they actually went to church with her, and they sent it to her to read. So basically, by sheer coincidence, I ran into one of Synni's IRL friends on a random Discord server, and the one who had given her the fic in the first place, one of her church friends, which was crazy. The person then kind of told me "Oh, Synni loves your story. If you want, I can give you her Discord so you can text her. I'll tell her it's the author of Takati." Of course I said yes. Keep in mind, I'd barely had Discord for more than a few weeks, and I had no idea how to navigate the site, and now I was given the personal DMs of a YouTuber with 500,000 subscribers. I was basically scared to death. I actually ended up faking going to the bathroom because I was so excited. I needed peace and quiet while I messaged Synni for the first time. I texted her something about how "Hi, it's the author of that one fanfiction. I love your ponytail story and animations." And she responded back in a friendly way, and we started having a little chat. In our first conversation, she revealed to me something very interesting right off the bat, that she had created and based her own self-insert fantasy in her head using my characters and world building from my fanfiction. And when I say my characters, I don't necessarily mean my own original characters, but because this fanfiction was my attempt at world building and making a cohesive timeline out of this AU multiverse, which doesn't really have a canon, they were characters made with my backstory and my characterization in mind, because the original characters themselves weren't given the same stories that I have given them in this story. For example, here, the character Gradient was used in her story with the world building that I had given him, which is that he was the, in my story, I make him, he's a bioweapon, and he lives with Ink at Ink's house, and he visits the council on occasion for schooling. And so she used that in her story with that same characterization. She took her own liberties with a few things, obviously. It wasn't an exact one-to-one, but there was a lot of similar and a lot of, heavy inspiration, which I didn't mind, of course. She called this self-insert world her vent world, and she always mentally retreated there when she was upset or otherwise just escaping into her daydreams. Her concept was that her and Ella, aka Sashley, and Jack, aka Birdie, worked for the Omega Council, and they all took orders from Alchemy and Ink and whatnot. They all had super overpowered abilities, and since it took place in the context of the Undertale multiverse, they would travel to different AUs for their job. And at the time, she was extremely secretive about letting people know about her vent world, and made me promise not to tell anybody, which I never did. I was always very careful about keeping her secrets, and I never told a soul. In the 5 years we've been friends, I have never once leaked any type of DM between the two of us. I loved hearing her talk about her vent world daydreams because I was honored someone as, with as much of a platform as her, liked my world building enough that she wanted to live there, and it was her favorite daydream. In our conversations, I started inserting myself as well, with Lorel as a character with yellow powers, because it was only her, Jack, and Ash, Sashley. I know they prefer to go by Ash. She prefers to go by Ash now. With the blue for Synni, red for Jack, and purple for Ash. But I inserted myself with yellow powers. I know I didn't necessarily fit into their gang, seeing as I wasn't an animator, and I had no audience and no history like the three of them did with each other. But Synni still humored my daydreams anyways, and eventually she texted me one day saying, Laurel has started appearing in my Vent World daydreams, and with a drawing of me added to the roster of the characters. And ever since that point, I was now an official member of her Vent World team, and was drawn in all subsequent artworks involving quote-unquote the gang. At the time, she was still with her then-girlfriend, Ambrixian/Kayla/Harper. Last I heard, they used they pronouns. If they go by a different name or pronouns now, then I don't know it, and I don't know how to get that information, and I apologize. I never really spoke to them during the beginning of our friendship, but Synni would often send me screenshots of their conversations as a way to share with me the things they would like to talk about, usually silly things or scenarios or whatever. And near the beginning of 2020, maybe around March, Synni began to share with me that she was no longer interested in her girlfriend and that she may be straight, which is also when her massive crush on Jack started to spiral out of control. She was extremely open with me and told me lots of things that I promised her I would keep private, and I always did. Even if I thought she was doing something stupid, I knew it wasn't my place to step in because I was still a very new friend and also an outsider. A relationship issue like that had to be worked out between themselves. I was a stranger. I only offered advice from the sidelines, such as giving suggestions on how to peacefully break up without, hurting their feelings, or how to put a healthy distance between her and Jack. I knew that breakups were always hard, but it wasn't my job to get involved, and I just tried to be a good friend, give emotional support from the sidelines. I know that Synni did explicitly tell me she was scared to break up with Harper because she didn't want to be alone, quote-unquote, which I understood generally, but was still iffy about, especially with the position that put Harper in, but again, it wasn't really my place to get involved between this. Eventually, I believe Harper found out about Synni's crush on Jack through somebody else, and they ended the relationship. I don't quite remember the details of how it went. It was a really long time ago. I was only an observer through all of this. I do know that throughout the beginning of our friendship, I have a feeling I don't think Harper liked me very much, especially after Synni added me to her vent gang. I remember a screenshot Synni had sent me way back when that I can't find, in which Harper expresses frustration that Laurel, who Synni only had known for a few months, was now a part of her vent gang, and they never were. And I do know as well that Harper had designed their own Vent World Sona with powers and a color and stuff, probably in the hopes of Synni adding them in. I don't think they liked how close I was to Synni when they were dating, even though I obviously wasn't interested in Synni like that. I didn't find this out until after their breakup, but it is understandable why they felt that way. They were Synni's partner, after all, back then. I do remember, though, a couple months after their breakup, Synni got back in contact with Harper to become friends again, but I think it lasted for a very short amount of time. I only had one friendly DM conversation with them, and we never really spoke again. I hope they're doing well, wherever they are right now. But then after that, all the Jack stuff started going off the rails. I believe public knowledge of Synni's crush on Jack came from a video by Streamline Workshop that was basically a birdie drama timeline. I looked on YouTube recently while I was writing this to see if I could find it, but I couldn't, so most likely it was taken down. I remember when the video came out, I only knew about it through 40 panicked DMs from Synni when I woke up the next morning with her having a complete meltdown. And she did end up calling me on the phone crying because now all of her dirty laundry was leaked, essentially. I remember when that video came out, I was so upset on behalf of Synni that I left an angry comment on Streamline's video telling her that I thought it was wrong of her to leak those things about Synni publicly. And then I went to bed, and then I woke up and deleted it the next morning because I didn't feel good about starting a fight. Another month or so later, I actually DM'd Streamline on Discord apologizing to her for my comment, saying that I didn't want any beef, and they said it was fine. I'm the kind of person that tries to minimize bad blood as much as I possibly can, because I don't really like making enemies, you know. I always feel like most things can be talked through, or at least we can just not hate each other, you know. But anyways, I'm going to take us back a bit before this came out. I have a personal policy when it comes to friends of mine that I do not publicly leak anything unless I feel like what I have been told is something that is a genuine danger, or there is hard evidence of that person being a genuinely awful person. I've always heavily disagreed with anyone who would leak Synni's personal artwork, no matter the contents, because I just felt like, just as everybody else does, even celebrities have a right to privacy and to be treated like a normal person, and every issue you have with a famous person doesn't need to go widespread public. I feel like a lot of drama can be just solved within yourselves, but is often turned into a big public spectacle for no reason, and never really solves any of the issues. However, this isn't a blanket statement. As of recent, I was in a lot of support of the screenshots of Synni's, conversations with Enno going public due to the fact that that was an uncrossable line, and there were now victims involved, and this was not drama, this was genuine danger, and I felt it was important that she be deplatformed immediately. After Synni became single again, she began fully pursuing Jack. She had reconnected with him over DeviantArt and joined his private server, which consisted of him and his then girlfriend and then boyfriend and a lot of his other close friends. She would often show me screenshots of conversations, art she would make, shipping the two of them, freaking out whenever he generally acknowledged her, and just sharing all types of crush fantasies with me. There's a lot of people out there who think I was supportive of this and encouraging her due to the fact that I was her friend, but it really couldn't have been farther from the truth. I think from day one, I explicitly told her I thought crushing on Jack was a stupid idea. At the time, I didn't really like him, and I thought he was trouble, as did, the entirety of the internet. I mentioned before that I had known him before I had become friends with Synni. Not personally, but just from the internet, from infamy, yada yada. And it was because of how famously controversial he was. I didn't know the extent of the drama because I never looked into it, nor did I care, but just the fact that I knew about its existence, even if I wasn't in the animation community, said something. So I knew who he was, and I knew he was kind of trouble. Anyways, digging through our DMs to write the script, I think I have 5 billion screenshots of me telling Synni being friends with him and having a crush on him was a genuinely horrible idea in every conceivable way. But obviously she wasn't really inclined to take my advice, but also I don't really think she was able to. A part of me realized that you can't really control who you crush on or intense, all-encompassing emotions like that. On a side tangent, I do want to mention that I am, it's a loud car. That's a really loud car. Anyway, on a side tangent, I do want to mention that I am Arrow Ace, and I basically have been, my entire life.
I don't know, man, I just feel maybe because I'm Arrow Ace. I'm Arrow Ace. Why is everyone Arrow Ace? What is Arrow Ace? Asexual. What? Arrow Ace is an identity term that describes people who experience little to no romantic or sexual attraction. It's short for aromantic, asexual. All right. Well, these are all mostly children, so I don't think they know what the they're talking about. I don't believe that really exists, to be honest. I don't think this is a real thing. I don't think Arrow Ace is a real thing in the real world, dude. I don't think that's... Sorry, I don't. Ace Hardware, base. I went to Ace Hardware to get my shears so I could...
My whole life, I don't think I've ever had a real crush on somebody before, and in terms of, sexuality or romance, I'm basically a complete blank slate. I've had 3 boyfriends in my life, and I had to be the one to end every single relationship and break their hearts because I felt nothing. And when I had been dating them, I had almost been using them as, test subjects hoping that I might feel something normal if I just try to date them, like, oh, step out of your comfort zone, just try it, you never know. And then, like, I ended up feeling nothing, and then they were, like, really into me, and then I would just feel really bad. I'm not a big labels guy, but at one point, that's, like, the only word I really can use to describe myself. I feel like there's no other word that I could use to describe myself. I kind of just didn't choose to be like this. I just spawned in like this. So, Oh, as a side note, by the way, I'm still in contact with all 3 ex-boyfriends, and they know it's not their fault. We're all still very friendly with each other. Anyways, long story short, what Cindy was going through, like, extremely romantic and emotional attachment to a guy she had a crush on was, like, insanely unrelatable to me. So sometimes my advice would be like, oh, well, just stop having a crush on him, which I eventually realized that's not really how that works. Especially when it comes to, like, extremely obsessive, over-the-top crushes like that. It should have been a sign to me that something was wrong, but at the time I didn't really see it because I didn't have my own emotional state to reference off of. I would often compare her to, like, my high school friends, like my IRL friends, when they had crushes, because I was friends with a lot of people in high school, and I had some friends that would, like, cycle through a new boyfriend every 2 weeks and talk about their current crush as if they couldn't breathe without him and he was the one they were going to marry. And I was like, how am I the only one who's, like, sees this cycle? Anyways, that's funny. I figured this was just something similar, like, it's normal for girls to be obsessive over crushes. I didn't really like who she had a crush on, sure, but it wasn't really my problem at one point. I had done all I could do in terms of, like, telling her it wasn't a good idea, so, yeah, it was her own issue by then. I never, like, encouraged her. I was just a support and a friend. If I didn't like something she ever did, I would just tell her outright without, like, making a big deal out of it, because I feel like that's how those situations should have been handled. Looking back, I still think the way Streamline publicly outed all of that was inappropriate. However, I'm not really here to bash them for it, because I know they did apologize for it in their most recent coverage of, like, the whole situation of 2020, a video that came out, like, 2 years ago. And I think that's the reason why the old video is taken down. I didn't watch the whole thing because I try to minimize my involvement in things that don't include me. But yeah. One thing that I did often emphasize to her would be that other people were not going to be as secretive about those kinds of things as I was going to be. Even if I was uncomfortable with what she showed me, I wouldn't take it public unless I felt like there was a damn good reason to. But I told her that other people are not like me, but she did end up sharing those things with other people, obviously, because that's what led to all this information going public. In terms of that one comic with Jack in it, the one I'm talking about, if you know this drama, she never showed me the contents of it, only that it involved her and Jack and was not appropriate. She sent me the page, she put my Sona in, to which I asked her to not ever do that again in the future, even just as a cameo, especially considering the subject matter in which that's used. I am very highly uncomfortable with myself or my persona being, involved in any remotely NSFW content. I was very uncomfortable with that comic existing, but I think in my head at the time I was just trying to rationalize it with the fact that she was just drawing a daydream with a crush, and as long as nobody ever saw it, then I guess it wasn't the end of the world. I never saw the whole thing or really understood its severity until it was leaked on YouTube in late 2023, but I'll get to that incident in a little while. Eventually I ended up joining Jack's server. I think it was Cinny who asked if I could, and Jack had said sure, so I figured that I might as well. I basically never spoke to anybody on that server at all or said anything to anyone. I knew that server was basically like a drama hotspot, and people would probably saw off their limbs to get into it, and I just waltzed in. I also knew that if more screenshots of that server ended up getting leaked and my name was seen there, then that would not be good. I didn't want to be associated with Jack and his group of friends back in 2020 in any way, because it felt like it was just a lot of trouble, and I did not fuck with that. I wouldn't leak anything unless I felt like someone was in danger, so I just watched, and I never did end up leaking anything. I was amicable with them, but also just, like, extremely distant, not wanting to be associated with them, but also there because I knew Synni had wanted to personally introduce me to all of her friends she had made on that server as well. So that was all, like, fine, I guess. I don't really know. I was also at the time having extreme, like, struggles IRL, so Synni's behaviors and actions weren't really a severe concern of mine. At the time, I was barely allowed online by my parents for more than 30 minutes a day, and at the time I was also recovering from a severely invasive surgery that almost cost me my life a few months prior. Plus, it was the middle of COVID, and I had severe health issues. I have had severe health issues my entire life. In 2020, it all came to a massive crux, so at the time, like, you know, online drama was just not something that was taking up a lot of brain space in my head. I would basically just go online for 30 minutes, say hi, react to the things Synni would send me and my other friends would send me, and then I'd just kind of leave again. Oh my god, the cars are so loud. Oh, god. Like I mentioned earlier, Synni's crush on Jack went public in early 2021, and from there it was complete mayhem. I'm not going to get into a severe amount of detail on this because most everyone knew what happened, but for those of you who were there and who were there to witness all the drama from 2021, you would probably know that I was very frequently seen defending her and arguing with people in the comments. Looking back, not really my smartest move, but I had never really dealt with a situation like this before. It was really funny, though, in retrospect, during this drama, when people were, like, making theories on that one leaked picture of Vent Gang. They were able to clock Synni and Jack pretty fast because their sonas were very, like, identifiable. And then eventually they got around to identifying Sashley as well, but they had no idea who I was, which was, like, really funny, because it's like, oh, yeah, the gang, we got Massive Celebrity 1, Massive Celebrity 2, Massive Celebrity 3, and then some random guy no one's ever heard of before. I once Google translated this, like, a Russian drama video that was, like, theorizing on who I was. When it was just me and Synni, talking one-on-one, especially when I didn't have access to the rest of the internet, and it would just be, like, you know, me and her talking, it was very easy to forget how large her audience was, but now all of a sudden, tons of strangers were making videos on someone who I considered to be my best friend, talking about how she's, like, you know, a disgusting and deplorable person, and saying a lot of things that I knew for a fact were not true. I didn't want to be, like, a white knight to her. There's a lot of her actions, like I said previously, that I disagreed with and I thought were dumb, but I didn't like how people were so blatantly bad-mouthing somebody cared so much about. It didn't feel right to, like, stand by and say nothing while I knew the answers that other people didn't. You know, she texted me every night. I was on Jack's server. I knew what was going on. I've witnessed the whole thing going down firsthand, and a lot of these people making commentary videos had only been, like, given, like, a handful of screenshots and were trying to basically connect the dots and put together a picture based on, like, the little information they were given, which ended up with a lot of false assumptions. I just felt like it was my duty to defend somebody that I cared about. And, you know, I was not really educated on internet culture. I really did pick a lot of fights with people in the comments on rant videos about her and in the comments of her community posts. I was taking a battle in the name of wanting to be a good and loyal friend to someone I had grown to care deeply about. Eventually, picking fights with randos in the comments kind of took its mental toll on me. Especially since I was already struggling so much with so many other issues at the time. I decided at one point that this wasn't really my fight to fight, and I know all my actions had good intentions, but I really couldn't handle the stress anymore, so I fully stepped away from my role of being an overaggressive dingus online. I had some friends at the time ask me, like, you know, friends that weren't involved in the animation meme community and who I had made friends with through, like, you know, Tumblr and the fanfiction community. I had asked, they had known who she was and all the drama, and they knew I was kind of a part of it now, and they would ask me, like, Laurel, why are you still, you know, a part why are you still friends with her? And I had always told them because I knew she wasn't a bad person, and that I knew that I was in the right during this drama. I knew that I was in the right, and that's what I always told them, is that I know things that the public doesn't know, and I know that I am right, and I'm not going to flake out when it gets hard. And obviously I was in the right. At one point, everyone apologized to her and took down all of their rant videos. One of my comments I left on another rant video was used as evidence in another video made by, I think, Gator Black Pen Art, which was a key tipping point in public opinion. Then when Synni published her own defense, she basically almost fully cleared her name, and everything went back to normal again. Her video had published in May of 2021, and by this point, she stopped talking to Jack, and they went their own separate ways. After this point, some more nonsense happened, and some other event happened, and most of Jack's friends split from him. I believe this was around when he left the internet, but I could be wrong. I'm not getting into a lot of detail about this because I genuinely don't remember what happened to cause this, and I also don't really want to go digging or ask Jack about it. That's his own issue. I'm not here to, get involved in his past. A lot of Jack's ex-friends, not his exes, decided to make a big group chat so they could all still talk and hang out with each other despite all leaving his server. This was called Sock Gang, which you might recognize from the initial call-out doc on Synni. I don't know why it's called Sock Gang, genuinely. I don't know who named it either. The Sock Gang group chat consisted of me, Synni, and a few others, mostly minors, who were all ex-friends of Jack. Despite not really being close with any of them, I was still invited to join regardless, which I was fine too. Everything there was fine for the most part, but like the doc did mention, there were on occasion inappropriate topics of discussion that were brought up. I never contributed to any of them, and every time the topic was brought up, I remember I would actively feel very uneasy, but I didn't really know what to do about it, so I would just ghost the chat until they were done talking. I'd have a mental war on whether or not I'd say anything, because I could tell that the topics weren't brought up with ill or predatory intent, but it still wasn't appropriate regardless. This is also when Synni's obsessive crushes on the characters belonging to Sock.clip began, and she would post about these characters very frequently in the group chat. Sock.clip, or Sockclip, is an artist responsible for the creation of many very popular Friday Night Funkin' mods. At the time when she developed her crush on Witty, both me and her only knew of this character from the popular mod and had no connection to the original creator. I had only learned of them from YouTube videos talking about the gameplay. I really enjoyed the character as well, but Synni naturally went down the path of self-shipping. She never realized this went against the boundaries of Sock until she got blocked by them, and then asked me to DM them asking why, and Sock did reply to me with the answer of, "I just don't want to see your content." Synni took this as a sign that she wasn't doing anything wrong, but that the creator just personally wasn't interested in seeing it. Therefore, she continued to do it. This continued through to the character of Boy as well, with her beginning to crush on him instead of Witty. But by this point, Sock's boundaries had already become well established, and this was after a point where Sock themselves had temporarily unblocked her to get upset with her. She said she would only ship with their characters in private, but I still felt it to be uncomfortable, especially for Sock, and suggested many times for Synni to drop the characters and perhaps make her own OC instead, since an insane amount of controversy was arising from her usage of these characters. Like, every time she posted anything about them, like, just 15 more controversies, and I just didn't really know why she was, like, I guess doing that to herself. There was also another controversy with her being insensitive towards the character of Boy, who was Arrow Ace. As someone who is Arrow Ace myself, obviously I can't speak on behalf of every single person who, identifies with that label. But personally, I didn't get too upset about it. I kind of just, told her, hey, I will just let you know that's not how it works. Yeah, and you should probably change it. And she went back and changed it, and I think it was on that point she started being quote-unquote private with her shipping. I was still uncomfortable, but I figured that similar to 2020, if she just kind of kept it to herself and only herself, then I thought I would be fine. Throughout all of this, another year passed, and then she became friends with Bug Spray, aka Pee-wee. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about them because they have explicitly said they do not like having their trauma turned into YouTube cheese. I'll only talk in general terms about my own personal reaction to the whole situation. I don't really need to rehash it. Bug, if you're watching, I hope you're doing well. That video coming out is what made the group chat of Sock Gang fully fall apart. Many members left, and on that day, I got a text from her then boyfriend, Soul, who had been in the group chat for a few months, on how to properly word a breakup message to her. It broke my heart genuinely, but of course I helped him. He was an extremely sweet guy. I feel like at this point my motto should be, I don't get involved, but I help. Soul, if you're watching this, I hope you're well too. When all that news broke, it was late 2023. I didn't say or do anything public on the matter because obviously I'm not a public person, but I was furious with her. Mad for being irresponsible and texting a minor. In the document, the one not made by Enno, but the one made by the ex-friend of Synny's, the screenshots in which I'm having a conversation with them in DMs, and also the one that Turkey Tom was reading and had a meltdown about Arrow Ace or whatever, that's me talking in the immediate aftermath of that event, of the event with Bug, and chewing her out. Even if the age gap was not bad or predatory, it was still highly irresponsible, especially for a large content creator and due to the fact that they were a fan. I was mad she ignored all my warnings not to show her private thoughts to others. I was mad about so many different things. All of her dirty laundry was now public, and I also saw the full force of the contents as well, which I hadn't been privy to prior. In terms of the Boy a Nightmare comic, which I'm also not going to be getting into any details about, she had told me she was making a dark vent comic in relation to her own traumas. She had started sending me pages a long while ago, but I made her stop and delete the ones she'd already sent, telling her never to send them to me, but also never to send them to anyone else, ever, because of how dark the subject matter was and how it included also a character that wasn't hers and that the creator would absolutely despise. I would despise it too if I was in their shoes. I strongly disliked the existence of that comic, but obviously I really couldn't do anything about it. I had thought the only reason she was sharing it with me was because she considered me her best friend that could be trusted with the more private corners of her mind. Since she never updated me again, I never knew anything about the comic for the 6 months she was making it, and I also had no idea she had been sending almost every dark comic she had ever made to that 17-year-old since 2019. I was in complete shock. As a result of all of that being aired as well, I got a DM from Sockclip one morning, DMing me and saying that she needed to talk to Synny, and I didn't really figure out a genius to know why. I do feel bad, though. Both times we had an interaction, it was because of me acting as a go-between during drama, and I am mildly saddened that's the only impression that Sock has of me. I have a lot of respect for them and their artwork. But, obviously, Jesus, I can't imagine being put in that position. I have some OCs as well. If that happened to me, I think I'd literally wig out. Anyways, in the aftermath of all of this, I barely spoke to Synny for almost 5 months. I didn't cut off our friendship or cut contact, but I almost never texted first. I let her know that I still cared and I was still there if she needed me, but the whole situation from November of last year had left a really bad taste in my mouth. Publicly, I gave no indication that there was anything wrong, because I never like to bring my own grievances or feelings public or give people, quote-unquote hints about things, because they are public figures and I am associated them. There's a bunch of weirdos that overanalyze everything and want to make conspiracy theories about them, and so I just try to avoid their gaze at all costs because it's just weird. And you'll notice that since the 2020 drama, I've never really publicly come to her defense. And I've let her fight all her own battles. I've said like maybe one or two things, only if it's like an especially stupid drama that like gets dropped within a day. I'll say one or two things, but other than that, I never really came to her defense again. She was an adult, her mistakes had no relation to me, and it wasn't my job to stress myself out over things that were not my problem to worry about. But yeah, I was extremely distant for a long while. I spent most of that time hanging out with other friends because I had a decent amount of friend groups outside of Synni, believe it or not. I knew that she was going to head off and pick up Jack soon as well. Obviously, I knew that she was going to live with Jack far earlier than the public did. She told me, and I remember specifically at the time, like in November, telling her that I didn't think it was a good idea. Number one, because I thought he was trouble. Obviously, I hadn't talked to him for 3 years, but number two, because I didn't want her extreme obsession to reignite again, because I had witnessed the damage it had done to her once, and I didn't want to see her completely collapse in on herself again. She had told me she had already made up her mind, so in response to that, I just wished her the best of luck on her trip, and, I was just hoping she proved me wrong, I was in brief contact with her from November to February, but very rarely, mainly just to check up on her and if she had a question. But in February, Jack posted his comeback video. When Jack made his comeback video, I hadn't known ahead of time that it was going to be published due to the fact that I wasn't in frequent contact with Synni, and me and Jack weren't friends at the time. We only vaguely knew of each other from back in 2020, and we were not friends by any means. I decided to get back into contact frequently with Synni again after the video had published, because it had been 5 months, and I felt like at that point the whole situation had resolved itself, and both parties involved learned their lesson and had moved on. I felt like a new leaf was turning over for both Synni and Jack in their lives, and I was willing to put the past aside to be a support and a friend in their lives, because at the time, there were not a lot of close mutual friends that the two of them shared that they could trust. And as a result, I started properly befriending Jack and beginning to text him one-on-one, sometimes when he was bored at home and Synni was at work. We would talk about all sorts of things, and while I was hesitant at first, I slowly warmed up to his presence. The Jack I was talking to now was a completely different person than the Jack I had brief encounters with in 2020. He was unbelievably kind and happy to make my acquaintance, and as time went by, we grew closer and closer. We had a group chat with the three of us, and the two of them would talk about their evening plans, their money problems, their house, their IRL friends. It really did just feel like we were long-distance friends at one point. We started video calling frequently as well. They'd sit on the couch together and video call with me, and we'd stay up late into the night talking. I was so happy to have them in my life, and I knew they were too. Later in the year, we made a group chat with Sashley as well, titled Luminous Gang, because for the first time in all 5 years Synni had made that concept, the four of us were all friendly and talking with each other. And it really felt like everything had been leading up to that moment. I guess Ash wasn't too present, but it was still... I had a lot of hope, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I really felt like everything was looking up for us, and that everything really had just all come to this. It felt like Synni and Jack both finally got their happy ending after years of struggles and fighting. I was doing well in college. Things were doing just generally going great. Around sometime in August or July, I started talking about plans to go out and visit them. Both my parents approved of my visit and were happy to give me the money I needed to cover the trip. I'm a full-time college student, so I don't really have a steady source of income, and I've had trouble getting a job, so it means a lot that they were so supportive. I had told them all about Synni and Jack, and they loved both of them, and things were looking good, I guess, and until they weren't, yeah, that's why I'm making a video. On September the 10th, I got a DM from someone who followed my Instagram linking a call-out document made against Synni. I felt a pit on my stomach seeing it. With a quick skim, I immediately knew who the one responsible to write it was. The document covered Cindy's irresponsible behavior when it came to the way she acted in her Discord server and the conversations she had had in her group chat way back then. I was aware of the group chat as I had been a part of it, but on the Discord server, I didn't know because I didn't check it very frequently. So I never really saw a lot of the things that she said and posted there. But something else I had noticed about the document was that initially they included screenshots that had me in it without blurring my name, and that represented me in a very bad light. And I began to panic, and so I immediately got in contact with the person who owned the doc to talk to them. We ended up having a really long conversation between the two of us that lasted around 3 hours, and I convinced them to take down the screenshots that had my name in it, and they did apologize for the misrepresentation, as I fully explained my thought process, and they understood and were sympathetic towards me, I guess. I never tried to defend Cindy in my conversation with them. I was only reaching out because there was a direct reference to me in a way that could be badly interpreted, and I wanted to clear it as soon as possible. The doc owner, who was an ex-friend of mine from Sock Gang, did tell me they never really had an issue with me in particular, but had included me in the document to prove that there were other adults in the chat, which I took issue with because to someone like skimming the doc, it would make it look like I was a participant in conversations of inappropriate nature when I never was. Should I have stepped in and said something? Absolutely, but at the time I was extremely nervous, and unfortunately, turning 19/20 doesn't automatically make you know how to handle a situation like that. I always knew something was wrong, but I was too scared to say something. I had bad social anxiety. I'm better at it now. I have more internet experience, and I'm equipped with proper tools to prevent situations like that from happening again. Obviously, I'm not the one engaging, but I've gotten better at recognizing them and taking initiative to shut them down if I witness it as a bystander. And that goes for you too, viewers. Don't be afraid to shut down a conversation you aren't comfortable with, or if you're witnessing something you know isn't right. Be brave and do the right thing. I sound like one of those don't do drug PSAs. This is embarrassing. Anyways, I was now on amicable terms with my ex-friend, who I'm just gonna call Booger Snot. So Booger Snot told me they had no ill will towards Cindy or Jack, seeing as they used to be friends with him too, and wanted to compile this document publicly because all of her behavior was public as well. There was very little in the document that I didn't agree with, but at the time I was just worried about this causing like Cindy drama World War III, because I was extremely stressed with my first few weeks of college at the time. There had already been a few incidents in the first few weeks that had stressed me out severely, and this being added to my plate just felt like a big cosmic prank. And I didn't think I could mentally handle it if another huge drama sparked, but I figured that we could make like lemonade out of lemons with this. At the time, both Cindy and Jack were on vacation to visit some family, so I told them that when they got back, maybe we could all video call and talk about the document, how to address it, and what we could do to move forward. I didn't intend on wanting to solve Cindy's issues for her, or play therapist or anything like that, and neither did Jack, but I did just want to provide support as a friend who wanted to see her at her best and to just talk through things with her if she needed that. Jack was there for her too. None of the behavior in the original document was warranting of a complete cancellation, but it was definitely a wake-up call and a sign to think more about consequences of reckless actions. Initially, I had the idea of doing something similar to a Jack or one of her older apology videos to clear up all the controversies, acknowledge wrongdoings, and move on from the better and not make those mistakes again. So with this whole controversy, I was basically looking like it as kind of a fresh start. But it just quickly became significantly worse than that. It became significantly worse than that one document, very quickly. It was like the night of Friday the 13th, which already, lol, at around like 8 p.m., It's like not even an hour prior, I had been texting both Jack and Cindy asking for their address and discussing airports and, like, you know, where we could go for their birthday. I hadn't officially bought any tickets yet, but I had, like, lots of tabs open with flights, and I'd been talking with my mom about, like, logistics, because she wanted me to be safe if I was to go out. She would want me to be in a pretty, like, you know, in a city or something like that, rather than in the middle of nowhere. But I hadn't officially booked anything until I was certain what the plan was going to be. I think I was in the middle of doing my homework that night when I got a Discord notification saying that I had gotten added to a group chat with me, Jack, Soph the Neko, and somebody else who I had never heard of before. I had only vaguely known who Soph was because I recognized that username from YouTube, knowing that they had made a video on the situation with Bug last year. I didn't watch it in full, and I don't have opinions on it, because at the time I was kind of just ignoring most of the Synni drama for the sake of my own sanity, but TLDR, I kind of vaguely recognized them. I was confused as to what was going on, and there was the other person in the chat, Eno, who I had never once heard of before. I asked a question like, who's Eno/Jen or something, and I think it was either Jack or Soph that just said, like, oh god in response, you know, like the horrific realization that I had no idea who that even was. And then that's when the bombshell was dropped on me that Eno was 14 years old, and Synni had been messaging them inappropriately for 6 months. I won't get into any details, you probably know them all already. Saying I was stunned silent was an understatement. I could not believe what I was reading. I asked Eno to send me screenshots in DMs, and they sent me everything. I could barely skim through it without feeling sick. I didn't even know Eno existed until a few hours prior, and knowing that all of this was happening behind the backs of both me and Jack, it was horrible. I genuinely, with all my heart, had thought she had fully learned her lesson and moved past this last year, so to see this really broke my heart. This is in late 2023, after the whole incident back then. She swore to me and directly made me a promise, to me specifically, that she would never do something like this ever again. So I had chewed her out. I was furious. She told me she wouldn't even make friends with minors in any capacity from there on out, which, I mean, like, you don't even need to do that. Just, like, don't be weird. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to, like, cut off any interactions with anybody underage entirely. Just, you know, don't be weird. But if that was something that was a boundary she wanted to keep, I wasn't protesting it, obviously. But I even told her, like, don't even share this with other adults. Like, this was like, I felt like it wasn't understanding the sheer gravity of how serious the topics she, like, in her personal vents, how serious these topics were. And at one point, I don't really know if they were vents, you know? I told her not to even share it with other adults because it was dark and horrifically private, and she genuinely made a promise to me that she literally wouldn't ever again, even with adults, and I trusted her. I genuinely thought, with how bad things had gone last year, that would have changed. So seeing these screenshots, I just felt like I was, like, boiling with rage, almost. I got on call with some of my trusted friends on a private server right after I found this out. I had been numb before, but it quickly turned to extreme distress, and very soon I was bawling my eyes out. Covered my whole desk in tears, crying like a baby, feeling ultimately betrayed and heartbroken, and knowing that this was the absolute final straw. I went to text Booger Snot when I found out. It's just kind of killed the mood with me naming them Booger Snot, but that's okay. Our relationship was amicable, yet still tense, given the circumstances for the last days we had been talking. But I texted them immediately, and I told them what happened, saying that, like, due to a severe shift in circumstances, I am now fully on their side, and I don't really think that she can really, like, you know, make a comeback, or, like, this isn't, like, some irresponsible behavior you need to change anymore. This is serious. And I believe that she needed to be fully deplatformed and was in full support of their document now. I will say that a silver lining throughout this whole situation was that through this event, me and Buttersnot ended up reconnecting and becoming friends again. All the tension gone. We stopped texting through the addressing Synnibear03 Instagram account and finally just went back to being friends again. Now that there's no more like Romeo and Juliet type situation going on. Throughout the 5 years I'd been her friend, I'd always stuck with her despite her controversies because I felt like despite irresponsible and stupid behaviors, she was a good person. She had a good heart and was trying her best, and I am loyal. I won't leave unless you give me a damn good reason to, because I am kind, maybe too kind, and I want to see the humanity and heart in every single person. But in that moment, I did wonder if I had given so much respect and loyalty to someone in the end who didn't end up returning the same respect. Because if she really valued my word, then why was a promise like that so easy to go back on? Not only that, but in a situation somehow 100 times worse than the one last year. It wasn't irresponsible behavior anymore, and there wasn't any excuse for it, so I was heartbroken. When Cindy came home and Jack confronted her, she found out and texted me that she was sorry and that she loved me, and I didn't know how to answer. I told her that I needed an extended break from our relationship, but in reality, I don't think I can let her back into my life again. I don't wish her suffering or any ill will. I want her to genuinely change for the better, make some new friends, but I can't be one of them, not after such a promise was broken to me. I didn't feel like she was putting the same amount of respect as I was into our friendship, and looking back on the number of times I had made sacrifices, it just didn't really feel like it was something I could keep going, especially not to this degree. There was no question. A strange part of me still cares, and you may think that's a stupid thing for me to think. And I also agree, especially since people have been hurt, but it's hard. She was my best online friend for 5 years. We used to call every day when I was on bed rest recovering from surgeries. I couldn't walk for months, and we would just call and laugh together on Discord. She wrote me a letter one day and sent it to me while I was grounded, telling me how much she loved me and how I was her best friend. She used my real name, and I cried while reading it. I loved her so deeply with my entire heart, and so did Jack. And as of writing this script, it's only been 2 weeks since all this happened. I've lost a lot of sleep, and I haven't been eating well, especially in the weekend following that Friday. Within just over 24 hours of having the news broken to us, Jack speed ran a video as fast as he possibly could, and I had spent the whole day pacing, unable to focus on anything until the video went up. I tried to do homework, but I couldn't concentrate. I also knew by then that any type of trip to go out to see the two of them was completely off the table. I had to call my mom and tell her that I wasn't going to be going anymore, which was a heartbreaking phone call to have. It was only about a week away, and I had to cancel everything. It was finally uploaded at 1 a.m., and with how severely the internet blew up afterwards, I couldn't sleep until 7 in the morning. My Discord server had started flooding with new members, and my friends urged me to go to bed and let the mods handle it, but I couldn't rest longer than 3 hours. In the subsequent 3 days after the video went up, all my social media started exploding in followers and in direct messages. On Twitter, Instagram, Discord, and even Tumblr, I started receiving floods of supportive messages from strangers, friends, acquaintances, and everyone in between. Even IRL friends started reaching out to text me, having gotten the video on their recommended. An Instagram account with 160,000 followers DM'd me, telling me they were so sorry for what I went through, losing my friend like that. Friends I hadn't spoken to in 3 years suddenly were there to send me supportive messages. My Twitter went nuclear, and I went from 500 followers to 1,200. I was used to a small audience, but the sheer number of eyes I had on me in that moment was more than overwhelming. It felt so odd to see so many messages because I feel like I didn't deserve them. I wasn't, the victim in this situation, but I did realize after a while that even so, I still lost a longtime friend, and people just wanted to extend their sympathy for how sad I must be. And it was true. I was really upset. Every time I thought I would fully over it. A panic attack would catch me out of the blue, something that doesn't happen to me very often. And eventually I ended up seeing the on-campus therapist for the first time because I felt myself spiraling. I'm still, quite frankly, not doing so hot. Me, Jack, and Soph are the ones to convince Enno to block Synni finally, a couple days after the situation, and I'm really glad they did. You'll notice that I haven't drawn a lot of attention to Enno in this video, and that is intentional. While they are a victim, they are still 14, and the sheer amount of attention has been doing more harm than good. Extend your care, but I don't think they can be publicly involved in this any further. I am in contact with their friends and am receiving updates on them, as well as making sure they're okay, so I will tell everyone right now they are fine, but they do need to get out of the public eye because it's having a lot of unanticipated and negative consequences. As for Jack, I think he's doing better now. We talk a lot, and he keeps me updated on his living situation. We're going to watch over the garden wall together soon on Discord. Maybe sometime later this year I'll fly out and visit him, maybe for Halloween or during winter break or something. That would be fun. One of the reasons I wanted to make this video was to clear up any misinformation. The day this came out, I got some weird Tumblr anonymous messages telling me to not only kill myself, but that I'm a horrible person who's always known how deplorable Synni is, and I only dropped her when it became acceptable to. I know there's a fat chance these are just trolls from like Kiwi Farms or some other stalking community that just sits around and preys on the downfall of people they don't like, but it still disturbed me nonetheless. Not only that, but there were people getting mad at me for being friends with Jack too, saying that he was also a quote-unquote terrible person who will wrap me up into chaos, but I feel like that's assuming I'm a moron who doesn't know how to say no. I know how to put distance between myself and my friends, but in the case of Jack, I don't see why we need to plan hypotheticals. We'll cross that bridge if we ever get there, you know? I've always been vocal in saying no when it comes to things that I don't agree with, and with Synni, I must have explicitly told her that things she was doing was dumb, like a million times. I always saw myself as her dear friend, but a friend that also let her face the consequences of her own actions without it having any impact on me. You can tell someone not to touch a stove 50 times, and if they decide to touch it anyways, at one point, you let them bandage their own wound. It doesn't mean you think they're evil or that you don't care about them, but there's a healthy distance between their problems and yours, and ever since 2020, I never got involved in hers. I'm the same way with all my friends, and their actions shouldn't reflect on me or be an indicator of what I support. Many automatically assumed I was supportive of everything Synni did because I was her best friend, not seeing our DMs where I would very explicitly say, "You're doing stupid shit," and then leave her to her own devices. But that's not a blanket statement, obviously. I'm not a complete doormat when it comes to my friends. Like, I'm not going to be like, "Oh, well, racist people, it's just a matter of opinion. You can be friends with different opinions." Like, okay, I have a limit. That's not a blanket statement. I am not a doormat when it comes to my friends. I choose them carefully. I have limits, but, this just went way past it. I knew from the instant that I heard the news on Friday that our friendship was officially over. Maybe I should have had more limits. Maybe I'm too nice, and I probably will have to work on that in the future, but genuinely, I did not see this coming, and that's what hurts the worst. All past actions felt simply irresponsible. There was nothing to defend this one. Another reason why I made this video was simply for my own peace of mind. The situation has been weighing on me extremely deeply, and even though there's nothing I want to do more than just forget about it and get back on track, it's easier said than done. There's been a very strong anxiety rooted in my soul these past 2 weeks, and I've been unable to wiggle it free no matter what I've tried, and I think in order to fully process this situation, I need to come to terms with the story I've experienced and share it all with you as well. This is Synni's nobody friend is finally speaking up and telling you all what she thinks when she never really has before, because I've never wanted to bring personal issues public, but nothing I've been saying in this video isn't things that nobody already knew. I'm not trying to, dig up more dirt on her or anything like that. I just fully need to close this door if I am to open a new one, I think. And Finally, reason number 3, I want you all to get to know me, because for those of you who don't follow me because of my fanfiction, to most of you, I'm not really known by anyone other than Synny's friend. The vast majority of Synny's fans, or rather ex-fans now, have absolutely no idea where I came from or even what I do or why we were friends. They only know me because I'm, there, I guess. And since I can't really be associated with Synny anymore, unfortunately, I hope now that you know a bit more about me, you can see me on my own. Of course, now some of you may see me as Jack's friend, but c'est la vie. Some things are out of my hands. I want to thank everyone who has watched this video to the end. And I want to say that if you're one of the people who sent me kind messages that day, I genuinely thank you from the bottom of my heart. I try to be the best I can be every day, and I'm glad I'm in the presence of people who truly recognize my efforts. Synny, if you're still watching, I'm so sorry it had to end this way. Please don't try and make a comeback, and please learn and never do something like this again. If you really still do care about me the same way that I have cared about you all these years, you'll honor my wish for your recovery. I don't really know what's ahead for me. The world is scary. Honestly. Jack mentioned in his video that I was going to be moving to Japan next year, and while that's a really big goal, it's not a guarantee. But it's something I'm working hard on. In terms of my writing, I need to get started on the 36th chapter of Takati. So for those who follow me for that, stay tuned. Next chapter is about Error and Dream. I'm also learning game development software this year for one of my classes, so hopefully that can take me off the ground as well. I'll link my socials in the description. My DMs are open if anyone has any questions or anything. Feel free to leave me a comment if you have a question, or, I'll try to answer as many as I can. Try not to be super mean and aggressive, though, because that's not very nice. I don't really know how to properly end a video, but I do just want to tell my friends online and in person, I love you all so deeply. The internet is a stressful place, but I don't regret any of the bad when the good outweighs it so severely. I hope to see you all again in a future YouTube video, most likely not a commentary one, because I low-key hate commentary channels. I'll see if I can make an animation or sometime in the next year, maybe finally put out an original song. I think only time will tell.